My name is Eleanor Hart, though in my son's house, I've become little more than a ghost. It began one evening when I stood at the doorway of his dining room, the place that used to echo with my laughter and recipes. I asked gently, "May I join you for dinner?" The pause that followed was longer than I expected. My son Daniel glanced at his wife, Sophie, before smirking. "She's old and bitter," he whispered, not low enough for me to miss. The words sank into me like a stone into still water ripples, carrying memories of scraped knees I had once bandaged, bedtime stories I had whispered, sacrifices I had made. I had endured criticism before, endured neglect, endured silence. But nothing prepared me for hearing my own child reduce me to an inconvenience. Sophie's delicate hand guided me toward the hall, as though I were an outdated painting. "Our life doesn't have room for relics," she said with a smile, so polished it hurt more than cruelty. That night, in the small room above their garage where I stayed, I wept silently. Even my grandson, Ethan, mocked me, his young voice floating up the stairs. "Grandma snores like a broken vacuum. Are we sure she's even alive?" It wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. But in the midnight silence, as moonlight spilled across the thin curtains, something stirred within me. A thought, a pulse. I will not vanish. I took out an old notebook, its pages yellowed from years of lectures and student notes. I had once been a respected professor of social sciences. On its first blank page, I wrote, trembling but steady, "I will not apologize for existing." The days that followed brought memories sharper than knives. Selling my late parents' home to fund Daniel's education. Watching him graduate. Believing my sacrifices would be remembered with gratitude. But gratitude had turned into disdain. My achievements were now dust. One evening, fever burning through me, I asked Sophie for broth. She looked at me as though I were a smudge on her perfect world. "Maybe dress brighter," she suggested coldly. "You look like a hospice patient in gray." Even sick, I changed into colors I never loved, lipstick smeared on lips that trembled with fever. But the truth was clear. To them, I was no longer family. I was decor they wanted to discard. Then came the moment that changed everything. Lying awake one night, I overheard Daniel's voice through the thin wall. Calm, practical, cruel. Maybe we should just pretend she died and hold a funeral dinner. Sophie laughed softly, like glass shattering. Yes, call it closure. People can forget she existed. My hands shook, not from fear, but fury. They wanted to erase me while I still breathed. I picked up my notebook again. On a fresh page, I copied their words exactly. Funeral dinner. Forget we had her. This time I didn't cry. I recorded. I documented. Because silence was their weapon, but memory would be mine. The next morning, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A small envelope tucked behind my late husband's photograph. Inside was a flash drive and an in his handwriting. If I go first, promise me you'll never let them silence you. When I listened to the files, my breath caught. The drive contained recordings, conversations I hadn't realized were preserved. Daniel's insults, Sophie's cold words, Ethan's mocking laughter. And then a second file, my husband's voice. You raised them with sacrifice. Don't let your story vanish. Be heard. For the first time in months, my tears weren't from despair. They were from resolve. What followed was not revenge. It was reclamation. I sent the files to a local journalist. Within days, headlines spread. Elderly professor betrayed by family. Audio recordings reveal ageism at home. The world listened. Strangers supported me. Hashtags trended. #respect, not relics. #listen to elders. Daniel issued a public apology. Sophie's business crumbled. Ethan faced shame at school. But Eleanor was seen again. I didn't stop there. With quiet determination, I used my savings to purchase controlling shares in the very company Daniel worked for. The next board meeting, I walked into the room, took the head seat, and announced, "This company will recognize dignity across all ages. Mockery, dismissal, or erasure of senior employees will no longer be tolerated." Daniel sat pale, stripped of power. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. In the months that followed, I created something new. The Legacy and Dignity Fund, a small foundation offering scholarships to older workers, legal aid against ageism, and retraining opportunities. Headlines changed. Not about betrayal anymore, but about resilience. Widowed professor turns pain into policy. Quiet revolution. One woman's fight against erasure. Now, when my grandson visits, he doesn't mock me. He brings sketches. One shows us holding hands. Above it, in his handwriting, "She stays." I keep that drawing on my desk. Beside it, my journal. Its last page filled with the words that carry me forward. Power is quiet. Legacy isn't inherited by blood. It is carried by those who refuse to disappear. And as dawn lights the sky each morning, I sit with my tea, unashamed, unwavering. I am not a relic. I am not erased. I remained. I remain.